And welcome to the Wellness Hub podcast, a show dedicated to uncovering the future of healthy living. Each week, we aim to bring you content that supports your personal health journey through insightful conversations with amazing guests. We explore various topics ranging from healthy eating, technology, fitness, mindfulness, and more. Now let's join our host, Drew Munro, co-founder and CEO of UpMeals, a Vancouver-based food tech startup on a mission to make healthy meals accessible through technology.
Hello and welcome to the Wellness Hub, where technology, entrepreneurship, and wellness meet. Tonight, if you're interested in growing or starting a business, learning from industry leaders, and gaining insights on wellness and mindfulness, you are in the right place. So stay with us. Every single week, we're hosting amazing guests discussing important topics designed to help you improve your life, both personally and professionally. And tonight's special guest is a mental fitness coach. Yes, you heard me correctly, who specializes in working with entrepreneurs to help them unlock greater potential in their lives through increasing confidence, helping them make difficult decisions with greater ease, improving even the most difficult relationships, and helping supercharge their productivity. Are you curious? Well, just like athletes require fitness coaches to perform physically at their best, our guest this evening is a fitness coach for the mind. I'm extremely curious about this, and we'll be diving deep to provide insights on how you can improve your mental fitness and achieve more for yourself today. Our guest tonight is the owner of UpLife Fitness Coaching, a mental fitness coaching business. He's worked with everyone from individuals to huge companies in his career, and we're going to find out from an expert exactly what it takes to be mentally fit. A reminder, don't be shy with your questions. We'll be answering them all throughout the show. So please type them into Facebook, into YouTube, Instagram, wherever you happen to be joining and listening to us tonight. So without further ado, please welcome our special guest this evening, Fyfe Barraclough. Fyfe, welcome to the Wellness Hub.
Thanks for having me.
Fyfe, you've got such a really great, interesting background and career, but before we get into that, I really want to stop and ask you, what helped you get into entrepreneurship? When did you get bit with the entrepreneurial bug?
Yeah, so for whatever reason in university, I was a sociology major, but I was always kind of curious about business and had it in the back of my mind that I would. And then coming back from traveling after finishing university, I was looking for work, and one of the job postings was for run your own business in the summer. No explanation other than that. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. So I looked into it, and it turned out it was posting for college pro painters to run a franchise. And that was kind of my doorway in. Ended up running a franchise for 3 summers, and was kind of like business school for me because you're doing everything. It wasn't just conceptual. It was like very, very hands-on. So wow, that was kind of my doorway in.
And so then you've had this, a little bit of it, you got your foot kind of in the door with the entrepreneurial journey, running a franchise, running your own business. So, what was the inspiration behind starting UpLife Mental Fitness? When did this idea kind of creep into your mind and you decided to execute?
So so after running the painting business for a couple of years, wanted to move on and try something different, try my hand at something else. And my dad actually suggested looking at going into coaching. And he was in HR, had kind of moved into coaching leadership and people and culture in a larger organization. He was like, I think this might be a fit for you. I think you'd like it. So I did an initial kind of program, really enjoyed it, and decided to go full in on coaching. And that was through coactive coaching, which is separate from the mental fitness coaching. And wasn't quite ready to jump in full on to having a business doing that, but that was kind of like the doorway in. Started doing some coaching on the side, ended up starting a business, running a franchise, which I still have with a business partner, and was working at a startup. And then it was around August of last year, I had an opportunity to dive into mental fitness. And it, again, just kind of like things fell into my lap at the right time. It was something that I needed for myself. And because of my coaching background, I could see the connection between coaching and kind of bridging that gap for clients, and decided to kind of go all in and make it a full-time thing.
Wow. Very exciting, inspiring journey. And you have a kind of a very specific and fascinating, I guess I'll call it a designation, a specificity, in that you focus on helping entrepreneurs is one of your primary motivators. So, what caused you to have that focus? Why did you feel that that was the biggest problem that you could solve with your business?
One, I've been through it.
Yeah.
It's a roller coaster, as I'm sure
Yeah.
you're aware. Like that,
Yes.
it's a wild ride. So it's something I've been through. It's something I'm passionate about. I think entrepreneurs have a very special place in the economy and just the world to really push positive impact and to be really creative with what their businesses end up doing. So for me, it just kind of fit together, and it's a really fun space to be in because people are creative, they're driven, they have a lot of energy, and it's a space that has a lot of stress too. So it's a good place to really be able to help people and have a bigger impact beyond me just coaching one person, because it impacts beyond just that one person.
And I think it's kind of brilliant, because you look at you made great points. Entrepreneurs have such a valuable impact to our society, to our world. They are high energy, often high performing, passionate people, but often, like myself included, like ridiculously underprepared mentally to move into this challenge that's in front of them, right? So I think you've hit the nail on the head on a massive need. I don't think most entrepreneurs are prepared for the mental strain. Walk me through that. What are some of, perhaps the most common things that you see entrepreneurs either forgetting or neglecting earlier in their journey that you help them with?
Um, I mean, there's so many facets to it,
Yeah.
but I think like some of the core themes that I notice, both for myself and just the people that I work with, um, one is just the self management. So it's really easy to get really focused on a specific goal. Most people that move into entrepreneurship are very goal oriented, hyper achiever, like really able to drive. But the ability to kind of keep your battery at full charge is a whole new learning space. And often what I see is what got you here won't get you there. So there's
Mm,
strategies that got you through school. There's strategies that get you through that first year or two of building a business, but you start to hit a ceiling with what strategies you have. And they're just natural strategies that we've built over our lifetime. And it starts to actually bite us and like come back full circle and like actually create the results that we don't want. Um,
mm.
so it's really like, how do you recognize that and then um, break through those things that have actually created success for us, which is kind of the trap, because you get a certain amount of success, but it costs you a lot along the way, which often is like relationships or happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. And most entrepreneurs, at least early in their careers, they sort of like make peace with that right away. They just acknowledge that, okay, I'm giving up all of this to get this. It's almost, when you akin it to, like, if you were going to do a marathon, right, you'd probably I would hope, do some training, like physically, before you show up on race day, right? Most
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, they're like, it's like figuring it out as you're running, which would physically have doubtful levels of success, right? So I love the concept of this, like, preparative and preparation mentally, and mental fitness. And there's another concept that you talk about pretty extensively, and that's, you call yourself a PQ pioneer. And maybe explain to our audience tonight, what exactly is PQ, and what should we know about it?
Yeah. So the organization I got certified through is called Positive Intelligence, and that is what PQ stands for. So there you have emotional intelligence, EQ,
Mm.
positive intelligence is PQ.
Oh.
And as a PQ pioneer, I was just one of the early adopters of PQ and mental fitness as a certification, and just kind of getting into that space early on. And essentially, PQ is your ability to handle life's challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. So similar to entrepreneurs getting success, it usually comes at a cost, but a lot of the time we're driving success through negative emotions like stress or guilt or fear. and we're like pushing really hard, and it's a lot of hard work, and it's mentally taxing. So the idea is, how do you start to get the same results without that cost? How do you use your brain and use the parts of your brain that focus on positive emotions like empathy, curiosity, creativity, and how do you leverage those in replacement of the negative ones?
This is a brand new concept for me, admittedly. Obvious, and probably you get that a lot, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of people have heard of EQ, but PQ is totally new for me. And thank you for sharing that with us. I definitely, that is an idea to explore. And I want to talk about the inverse of that, which is something that I think you hit on a lot, which is this. You touched on it earlier. You start to get almost, if you're not dialed in with your mental fitness, you start to have these negative cycles, these almost, you could call it self-sabotaging cycles for yourself, where you're holding back your own success. So, talk to me a little bit about what you've seen, these self-sabotaging cycles, and what advice would you have for people to try to break through them?
Yeah, that's a big question. But so what tends to happen is, as you go through life, we all have natural strengths. And we leverage those as best we can, but often they have kind of like a hidden dark side. And like an easy analogy is like Star Wars. There's the dark Darth Vader, like Sith side, and then you have like your Jedi. And it's like two sides of the same coin. And what happens is, so I'll use myself as an example. There's 9 archetypes for saboteurs. And if people are curious, you can go to positiveintelligence.com, and there's a free assessment for how you self-sabotage. And one of them is the pleaser. So just the name alone probably tells you a little bit, but they kind-hearted, they like to help people. Like there's some inherent strengths in it. And that's one of the top ones that I have. But what happens is you overuse and abuse that, and you actually subtly put other people first, and some resentment can build up and frustration because you might not be getting exactly what you're thinking you want to get, or people don't know the expectations that you have. But it's built on these subverted strengths, but it just gets overused, and it's this survival strategy. So especially when we're in more stress, we fall back on those. And another one that I see a ton of entrepreneurs struggle with is like the hyperachiever. So we kind of talked about that already, but because you're driving for success, a lot of what drives that is success and worth being tied together. Like accomplishment is good. And it's a very North American cultural thing, I think, personally, where it's like, success is good, achievement's good. I want to get accomplishments, look at the medals, look at my degrees, it's like, that's what we kind of think is good. But what happens is our ego gets so tied to that success and that achievement that failure of it is terrifying, because it means like, who are we if we're not getting that?
Right.
And the part for me that was kind of fascinating that I didn't play into, because some of that like kind of makes sense, right? You're like, oh, I can see how that happens. But because we're so tied to the outcome, and our identity is so tied to that outcome, we're not willing to shoot for the moon the same way. So you actually put a subtle self-limiting ceiling on your goals, because if you don't hit them, like, who are you? Right.
Right.
And it's like this weird dynamic that can happen. So there's these,
and then the bigger the goal, the bigger the goals, the bigger the failure would ultimately be, right? Which is self-defeating. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, that's fascinating. Sorry, please continue.
So anyways, there's these different archetypes, but they're all built on these subverted strengths. And we're all a variation of these different archetypes. So my top one is a pleaser. I have the hyperachiever one too. Another one that a lot of entrepreneurs have is the restless. So very much like going task to task, trying to do as much as possible in the smallest amount of time. It's like a very frantic kind of energy to be in. And again, a lot of these things are great because they help you get to where you are, but at a certain level, it bites you in the ass. Like you can't go to that next level because it's a ceiling, because you're using that survival strategy, and it is a survival strategy at its
And
essence.
what was that link again for that test? Could you give that out again?
Yeah, just go to positiveintelligence.com, and
Positive
there's
intelligence.
a tab for saboteurs, and yeah, it takes like 5 minutes.
I'm gonna be hitting that link hard
Yeah.
as soon as this interview finishes, and I think a lot of our audience is
Yeah.
that's a I think it's important for us to have that self-awareness there, and you something I find fascinating as well. Again, is that one thing I think that is universally agreed upon in terms of entrepreneurs is that they're problem solvers, right? And everyone can agree you're an entrepreneur, you're naturally a problem solver, and the challenge that you find is that at a certain level, the problems sort of exceed your ability to execute and find solutions. Like they're out of your swimming, right? So, what advice would you have for maybe potential entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs that are faced with problems that seem insurmountable and overwhelming?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that, I mean, the first instinctual response, which you probably get from a lot of people to this question, is break it down into smaller pieces. Like that's kind of where you tend to go. But I would kind of go even further back, because you're probably so overwhelmed that you can't focus well to break it down into pieces. So starting from baseline, it's like, are you actually in like a deep survival mode? And are you like all hijacked and wound up that you can't actually think clearly, and you're just in overwhelm mode or anxiety? And starting from a place of moving yourself out of that space and that energy is where I would start, because again, the concept of saboteur, like your Darth Vader or your Jedi, your sage, there's two different regions of your brain that you're using. So you want it to try and get off of that Darth Vader side and activate the part of your brain that's the Jedi side. And
Got it.
What you do is like meditation's one activity that you can do, going for a walk, closing your laptop, deep breathing things, but like just starting that side of your brain will help build more creativity. It gives you more access to different patterns of thinking. And what often happens is, especially because of just Western education, we're so trapped in just analytical, logical, think harder. But that's that same saboteur wiring of your brain. That's the very like left brain. It's like you want to try and get off that and have a bit more creativity and create new neural connections. So just seeding that and contemplating gently. And sometimes going for a walk is when you have those best ideas, or in the shower. Like that's why it's like a different part of your brain that's lit up.
And one thing that we often talk about, it's sort of related, we talk about this a lot here on the Wellness Hub, is imposter syndrome, right? Something that I'm sure you deal with a lot with your clients. What is your take on imposter syndrome?
So I think it's something we all deal with. I do. I know as a coach, it's like I have it. I think we all do. It's just who talks about it. Some people are more open about it. And
we talk about it a lot on this show.
Okay,
so
that's
we can
awesome.
we can be as open as you want to be. We talk about it a lot. So feel free, let loose. Yeah.
And I think it's great. Like just normalizing it is a huge step, because it is something that you need to talk about just to actually overcome it. My take on it is, we feel like an imposter because we don't feel like we know enough, or we're good enough. And a lot of that comes down to how we see ourselves. And generally where that stems from is, again, that saboteur, that Darth Vader side of us. It's like, you need to be better. And we're motivating ourselves through these negative emotions, like be better, go faster, like you're not doing good enough yet. This kind of negative emotion we assume is going to get us farther. And again, there's a part of it that's good. It's like a growth mindset of learning more, like a learning mindset, but it kind of infected with this negative energy.
Mm.
And it's a judgment of ourselves. And I would differentiate judgment from discernment. So judgment has a negative energy with it, whereas discernment's like more factual, objective, carries less psychological weight. So usually the way out is just having empathy. And this is one of the things I see most entrepreneurs struggle the most with. A lot of the conversations I have with high performing entrepreneurs is building more empathy for themselves and the people around them is the best way to kind of cut through that negative cycle that you have about you're not good enough. You're not good enough yet. You don't know enough. Other people are better than you. Like that's that cycle of Darth Vader being like, you're not good enough, be better. And you have to like have more compassion. And there's techniques to tap into that more, that empathic side.
Yeah, having empathy for yourself. I mean, two things. One, having empathy for yourself is a really, really interesting approach to that problem. Not just being so hard on yourself, right? It's all right. Like you're doing a good job. Hang in there, and those small modular improvements. Two, I really hope that our audience has seen Star Wars because there's a lot of references that they might be missing. But if you have not, go see it, of course. But yes. Great insights. We've got some questions I'm going to throw to really quickly. We've got some questions coming in from our Instagram here. First one here. Do you have any tips for startups that are currently scaling and managing all of the growth that comes with that?
Yeah, I mean, at its essence, it's chaos, right? It's growth mode. Like there's stuff happening everywhere. What is the one thing that you can actually control? Yourself and how you think. So again, it's so easy to look outside of us and be like, we need this marketing strategy, or we need this kind of outward external thing. And it's almost easier to do that because you can just go click some links and find some new strategy. And a lot of the time it's that, again, it's like physical fitness. If you want to get fit, you have to go to the gym. And it's the same thing with this. It's like, if you want to be calm and grounded in chaos, it's like that requires a lot of internal work to cultivate that. So meditation, mindfulness, doing like, I have an 8-week program for entrepreneurs if people are curious. So yeah, it's building that capacity and that self-command, which comes with mindfulness and meditation mainly. To have a bit more, grace in the storm, if you will.
And this is a kind of a good follow-up question here. This is coming in from Instagram. Is that, do you think that the culture of an organization can foster mental fitness, and how?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shameless plug. Like I can deliver this to organizations. There's like the program can be delivered to companies at scale. So I'm in talks with a couple companies right now, but the main focus is like, how do you install this into the culture so it becomes a long-standing, sustainable thing? And that's why I was so drawn to mental fitness, because often there's a workshop that you have, maybe you have a guest speaker, and you kind of get this insight and this conceptual understanding, and it's exciting, but then it just falls flat a day later, a week later, 3 months later. But it's like, you need that long-term sustained habit building organizationally as an individual. And then that's what collectively creates the organization.
Okay. So yeah, all the established companies out there listening that want to improve that culture, please check Fyfe and his business out. UpLife. We're here on the UpMeals podcast with UpLife. I feel like you kind of one up me on the name. Like we've got meals, and you're like, well, we're UpLife. I'm like, okay, well, how am I gonna beat that? UpLife times infinity. No, I'm just kidding. Great suggestions. And the idea, I agree with you 1000% that, that a company can foster that culture and needs to put work into it, just like an individual would doing this on their own. It's very deliberate, and great resource and great program. Let's talk burnout. This is something that we talk about a lot, especially in the last year and a half. A lot of people have been talking these new phrases: Zoom fatigue, uncertainty, health concerns. What is your advice for an individual who's dealing with burnout on top of everything else they're going through?
Yeah. So I've experienced the same thing. I worked at a startup for 3 or 4 years on Zoom. So like very familiar with Zoom fatigue and everything that people are experiencing. Burnout's a tricky one because for me, burnout, it's like you've already hit the wall. And it's kind of like you need a full reset, not like quit your job and uproot everything. But it's so sneaky in how it gets there. It's like this downward slope, but it's so gradual that you don't really notice it until like it kind of hits. So for me, if somebody's actually in like full on burnout mode and that's how they describe it, I would say if you can just like book a week off work and go to an Airbnb and try not to be on the computer at all. Like just try and disconnect digitally, go for a bunch of walks, meditate. That might not be as the speed for other people. That's what I enjoy doing in my downtime if I don't have to do anything. But as much as possible, just disconnecting and doing the activities that fill your cup and energize you. Because if you've hit that wall, like it's really hard to fill your battery if you're at zero when you're still doing work. If you don't have that option to take that time off right away, I think the biggest thing is setting boundaries. I think because everybody's working remotely now, it's so much easier to be switched on and accessible. So setting really clear boundaries. This is when I'm working, this is when I'm not. And maybe you start taking a 3-day weekend or shorter days, but just like incremental moves to give yourself more space to recharge those batteries. It's probably, it's a simple thing, but like it's easier said than done.
Yeah, like let me maybe rephrase that question a little bit, because you made a really important point. Like if you're already in burnout mode, like you gotta do a hard reset, right? Like it's too late almost in a sense. So how can you recognize the signs when you're approaching burnout mode and take action then?
So for me, it's and what I've seen with clients as well, motivation starts to drop. So you might have been really engaged before, and you can probably see this in people you work with too. Things are going great, and then like engagement starts to drop. They're not as happy. Life's not as zesty. Their energy's not as good. I find life just gets more dull. Things kind of get grayed out. I call it zombie mode because I feel like I'm a zombie and I'm not as present. So if I'm in a room with people, like I'm just in my own little world, either stewing on stuff I have to figure out or work on, or I'm just like, I'm so burnt out that I'm just gone. So those are some of the cues for me. If my need to exercise, like if it gets to a point where like, oh, I don't want to exercise, that's pretty serious. It's like, okay, I'm really creeping up on something. And just other things like my responses to things that wouldn't normally set me off or upset me do. So something will happen, I'll just get like either more upset or angry or whatever. And I'm like, that's just a weird response. I would never normally do that. It's like, oh yeah, like I'm probably something's off. But I think doing a self-inventory often. So I journal quite often. So it's taking like stock every once in a while. It's like, how am I feeling? What's going on? What's going through my head? I think that's helped me because I've journaled quite often. I can look back and be like, oh, that's how I was talking to myself, or those were the things that were going on at that time. You can start to have some pattern recognition around it.
And you hit on something like really, really important, where it's just that engagement drops. And then, as an organization, like I guess this is a question now for companies who are managing employees. Like as an organization, when you're in growth mode, people are putting in hours, and there's nothing else you can do. You just got to get it all done, and you start to feel your team's engagement drop. Do you think an organization can tackle this in a similar way? How would you advise a startup to handle a team's waning engagement?
Yeah. Model it. So as a leader, it's like you do take the time off and you do put those boundaries up for yourself, because it's easy to tell like you're the leader and you want to get as much done as possible. And if it's your business, you're just that much more invested. But people will follow what they see more than what they hear. So if you're saying you need to do these things, or like you need to take better care of yourself, if you're not modeling that, it's really hard for that to actually take flight.
Yeah. Good point. Really good point. Lead by action. And I want to ask you something that might be tough for you to answer as a coach who gives out great advice like this all the time. But what is the best piece of advice that you have personally ever received?
Yeah.
It's double tough for you, the coach who literally your job is to give out great advice like this.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to hear it.
So, I mean, I've had some just amazing coaching from other coaches, but for whatever reason, the two things that always stand out for me, it's like if I fall back on something, it's what my parents have shared with me. One, my dad just being like, learn from everything you do. Because it's easy to learn from the stuff that's working well. And it's really hard to take a close look at the stuff that doesn't feel so good, or like you've actually really screwed up on. That can be painful, but it can be anything. Like anything you're doing, you can learn from it. And it's just like an abundant perspective. So that one always stands out for me for whatever reason. And then my mom was in psychology when she was younger, and as a kid, she would just be like, just smile. If you're in a bad mood, just smile. Just smile. And they're like, the body, there's connections between your brain and your face. Like there's studies where if you put a pencil between your teeth, it'll like improve your mood, because your like facial muscles will actually connect to your brain. Really? Yeah, there's a study around it.
I'm like looking for a pencil right now, but I don't use a pencil. Who uses pencils anymore? But anyways, yes, amazing. So I didn't know that.
It kind of came full circle for me, because again, like mental fitness, like your brain and how it connects to your body and how you show up. Like there's so many cool things with how it all fits together and how it works.
Now, as a busy, another topic, a hot button topic we'll call about, is this concept, and everybody's got a different idea of what work-life balance should be, right? Another thing we talk about a lot for someone who advises exceptionally busy entrepreneurs and businesses. What is your take on what work-life balance is, that concept, and what it should be?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tough one. I've heard somebody else share, it's like it shouldn't be called balance, it should be called harmony, because it's kind of always,
integration.
It's always kind of out of balance one way or the other. But I think as much as possible, boundaries are really important. It's something that I still struggle with myself, of like, okay, I work from home, so it's like, when do I end my workday? When do I actually stop and shut off so I can recover? And having those boundaries, just the self-discipline to stop when you need to, weekends, end of the day, that kind of stuff. But what's worked for me and what's worked for clients is you put things in the calendar that force your hand to have a boundary. So it's like meeting a friend for lunch, or like you have your workouts at 5 p.m. or something structural in your day where it kind of forces your hand, and build in that practice for recovery that you need.
We've talked about this. I've had so many takes on this subject, which I find so fascinating, and it's come up in so many discussions. And what I've learned is that almost everyone has had a different wonderful answer, but I think the true answer is that it means different things to almost everybody. And it needs to be almost like a plan for yourself about what brings you joy, what brings you happiness, what brings you that, if you want to call it balance or integration or harmony, what brings that to you in your life? What does that look like for you? And it's almost like trying to find a definitive answer to a question like, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, right? Or what's the best pizza topping? Like everyone's going to have a different answer. So I always love to hear, especially from a professional like yourself, your take on it. So that was awesome. We ask a lot of different questions here on the Wellness Hub, but there is one question that's actually always the same. And that question is a very important one. And that is, what is your go-to meal?
A go-to meal.
Your favorite go-to meal when you want to feel recharged and refreshed and happy.
Yeah, I don't know if it makes me feel refreshed, but like,
sorry, let's eliminate that adjective. That doesn't need to make you feel refreshed.
But my go-to, like my fallback, if I just need to whip something up, an egg sandwich. It's like I can have it anytime.
Great
like
answer.
So quick and easy, but it's a bit more than like toast or something. But it's not necessarily like the most restorative, refreshing meal.
It should just be happiness inducing. That should be how we should describe it. Happiness inducing. I stand corrected. Yes. A great answer. Egg sandwich. That's a new one. I love a good egg sandwich, and I think that's a fantastic answer. I want to touch on something just really quickly. You mentioned previously is that you had amazing coaches in your career. So talk to me about, one of the most formative coaches you had, and why was that so important for you?
Yeah, I've had like quite a few. So I've had business coaches. I've had personal life coaches. One specifically stands out. Her name was Kelly. And just the level of, I think one of the things that I take away from really good coaches is one, the vulnerability that they have to create a space to draw you in. Like it's just the authenticity and how they show up in their presence is just different. I don't know. I'm sure you've had coaches too, or you're just around people where you're in their vicinity, and it's just like they just show up differently. You're like, whoa, it can be intimidating in a way, just in terms of how they hold themselves. But just the way she was able to challenge me and take a stand for me was quite eye-opening. And I think that was something that I've taken from her specifically, was daring to kind of jump off the ledge, if you will, like daring to be fired and saying the things that I needed to hear and challenging me at the cost of potentially losing a client. Like it was a gift to me, and we actually ended up stopping working together at that point because she kind of called me out, and I just wasn't at a place to take myself to that level. And it was a huge kind of turning point for me because I'd never really been called out in that way. And it took me a little while to process it, but the level of trust that she had in me to take that step was like eye-opening. Like I'll never forget that.
Wow. And that's where as they say, that's where the growth happens, right? Right at that end of where you're like, hold on, I've never done this before, and no one's ever talked to me like this before. That's where that growth happens, and that's what good coaches ultimately do. And I want to ask you something. This is maybe another shameless plug opportunity, but that's what we're all about. For anyone that's maybe doubting the value of having a coach in their life, what would you say to that person?
Have you tried it?
Yeah, great.
A lot of people have
great answer.
These conceptions of like what coaching is, how it feels. It's like, but they've never actually had coaching. It's like, you go try it out. Like you have to try it on, and it might not fit the first time. Like when you try on a pair of pants, the first time it doesn't fit. So like, try it. Like you can find somebody that will change your life if you're looking for them.
Amazing answer. That's a perfect answer to that question. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great tie-in to our conversation here. Fyfe, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and the great work that you're doing?
Yeah. uplifementalfitness.com. There's a overview of kind of who I am, how I work, and the program that I have for people to build their mental fitness. I put people through this action learning pod group that I facilitate, and it's been a ton of fun, and people love the accountability and the group aspect of it. Or you can hit me up on Instagram at UpLife Mental Fitness.
Fantastic. Fyfe, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the Wellness Hub tonight. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, sharing your amazing insights with us. And we hope to have you back and give us an update very soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Take care. Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah.
That was just awesome. A huge thank you to Fyfe for joining us, hanging out tonight on the Wellness Hub. Who feels ready for a mental fitness workout? I'm feeling strong. And I think Fyfe has really tackled this huge problem of mental health head on with this unique coaching. So it was really inspiring to hear him share all those amazing insights with us tonight. Like the concept of mental fitness, it just makes so much sense when we really think about it, doesn't it? But too often we're always associating fitness of any kind with our physical bodies, and we're mostly reactionary when it comes to our mental health. So as we mentioned in this show, think of it this way. If we were running a marathon, we'd train our bodies accordingly, at least I hope so, and not show up cold turkey on race day. So why not train our minds in the same proactive way in advance of starting a massive opportunity like a business, a huge opportunity, or navigating a brand new relationship? I mean, all of us can probably remember the last time we went to the gym to work on our bodies, but how about the last time we purposely worked on our mental sharpness and fitness? I think it's a concept that makes sense, but the majority of us just simply don't know where to start. And Fyfe has stepped in and solved that problem through his unique business and his unique program. And I encourage you, if nothing else, to just think, what level is my mental fitness at? What is the last thing that I've done to improve my mental fitness level when it comes to my life, my work, or my relationships? Like with sports, our level of effort and training, it often dictates our results. And the best coach teams and the best coach players, they often win the most championships. So perhaps it's time to consider a coach of your own and see how you could be getting championship results in your own life, whatever that ends up meaning for you. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And if you'd like to see more great conversations like this, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn at UpMeals. We will see you next Wednesday evening right here on the Wellness Hub for another great conversation. Until then, I'm Drew Munro. Take care.